Hey everyone, welcome to another segment on chapter 2. And on this chapter, we take the demand, all the consumers, we looked at the demand curve, and then we take the supply, all the producers, we looked at the supply curve, and we bring them together. So you keep in mind that consumers on the demand curve, they want the lowest price out there, and producers on the supply curve, they want to get the highest price. So we just get together and find one that works. But first, we have to define what a market is. And most of you have, just such a super strong intuitive feel for what a market is, you would be right. But formally, it's a place that allows buyers and sellers to exchange products or services. So there's many examples of what a market is, right? Just from your basic strip mall, or if you wander a little bit from SAIT, you can find a North Hill Mall. Or if you drive south of Calgary on your motorcycle on a hot summer weekend, there's the farmers market in Millerville where people have their little stands out and buyers come and join them. Or the internet, that's a huge market, and more specifically, things like eBay. So buyers, they're the ones with the demand curve carrying it on their shoulders, and sellers are all carrying the supply curve, and they all get together and you try and find an equilibrium. You try and break out a price that works for everybody. So we define equilibrium as a point where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. Right down here it says QD equals QS. It really bears pointing out that this is not where demand equals supply. So don't ever say that. It's splitting hairs here. It's being very specific, but where demand equals supply, that would mean the whole demand curve equals the whole supply curve, and that can't be. It's one particular point on the demand curve, one quantity demanded equals one quantity supplied. That's our equilibrium. And then there's neither a shortage or a surplus. Everything that producers wanted to sell at a going price, they can sell, and everything that consumers want to buy at that same going price, they can buy. So equilibrium, neither a shortage or a surplus. It's where QD equals QS. So when we're not in equilibrium, let's take off from that point. What exactly is a surplus and a shortage? Well, here we've got them defined. The surplus is amount by which quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded. So in other words, it's where producers have got more product than people are wanting to buy at that particular point in time. And they say it occurs at prices above equilibrium. Well, think about that intuitively. If the price is above equilibrium, equilibrium is where the amount that's bought just equals the amount that producers wanted to sell. So that's equilibrium. If the price is above equilibrium, think of it as being too high. So if it's too high, quantity demanded, well, that's not going to be as high as the quantity supplied. So quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded at prices above equilibrium because prices are too high. So we'll end up with a surplus. People won't want to buy all the product that producers are willing to sell. Okay, so then what's a shortage? Well, it's the opposite. At a shortage, quantity supplied is too little. It's less than the quantity demanded. And they say that occurs at prices below equilibrium. Well, intuitively, prices below equilibrium you can think of as too low. And when you've got prices that are too low, people really want to buy that product. They'll snap it up, and producers will run out. The quantity supplied will be less than the quantity demanded, so that causes the shortage. Okay, so let's just look at a table with a market supply and a market demand curve. That's what we've got in front of us. And notice here's the supply curve because it's comparing all the prices to the different quantities supplied, so that's QS, that the producers would be willing to make and sell. So as price goes up, quantity supplied goes up because it's more profitable, so they want to increase the amount they'd be willing to sell. The demand curve is the relationship between the quantity demanded and the different prices. So as price goes up, the quantity demanded gets less because people don't want to buy as much. So the way you figure out if there's a shortage or surplus, you always go quantity supplied minus quantity demanded equals something. So here quantity supplied is only 8. and quantity demanded is 22. So that difference is 14. So we put a minus sign there because the math works out to a minus sign, but that flags us that that's a shortage. The minus, there's not enough product. Quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied. So if the price goes up a little bit, quantity demanded is going to fall off. Well, quantity supplied went up, but let's just look at the numbers. 12 minus 18 is minus 6, so there's still a shortage, but you can gain that knowledge from just looking at it. 12 is quantity supplied, 18 is quantity demanded, so there's going to be a shortage. There's not enough product to take us to equilibrium. We look at a price of 20, where the price is steadily going up here. QS minus QD, well, that equals 0. So quantity supplied equals quantity demanded, but let's keep going. Price goes up to 21. Well, producers are willing to make more. Buyers want to buy less. Price is rising. So QS minus QD here is actually 11, and it's positive 11 because quantity supplied now is quite a bit bigger than what people are willing to buy because prices are getting higher. So we end up with a surplus, too much product there. And then the last, if the price goes up to 22, market quantity supplied goes up quite a bit. Producers want to produce even more because they're making more profits at higher prices. But consumers want to buy less. Now they only want to buy 6 at that high price of 22. So 24 minus 6, we get a final number here of plus 18. So that's the biggest surplus of all. So we went from a shortage, smaller shortage, 0, surplus, and bigger surplus. So let me just ask you, where's equilibrium? And hopefully most of you went right here. And that's because right there, quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. So always calculate these things, QS minus QD, but where QS equals QD, that happens at a price of 20. Right there, they're the same. That's our equilibrium. I'm just going to write EQ here because I can't write the whole word. That's our equilibrium right there where QS equals QD, price of 20, 16 is QS, QD is 16, and we get neither a surplus nor a shortage. If you go back in the slide, you'll see that's exactly its definition. So let's draw this. There's our demand curve, downward sloping to the right, and there's our supply curve, upward sloping to the right, both reflecting the law of demand and the law of supply. At a price of 20, QD must equal QS at an output of 16. So that's our equilibrium. QS equals QD, and they're both 16 right there. So if someone says to you on this slide, what's QS? You go at a price of 20 across, come down, that's QS. What's QD? You go to a price of 20 across to the demand curve, come down, that's 16. So we're in equilibrium here. QS equals QD, and they're both 16. And in fact, I'll go one step further and say that equals QE, and we know that that's 16. So all 4 of these things, QS, QD, QE, and 16 are all the same. They're the equilibrium quantity.